Well, oh my. Good morning to you. Hold on a second. I haven't really talked yet this morning. As you can tell, my voice is a little bit lower than normal. I've got some crud that I got from hanging out with either Disneyland people or with my grandkids. But I could talk yesterday. At least last night I was able to talk, but I did not sleep well. I took some aspirin for the pain because I've got a sore throat, and I was gargling with salt water, but I still, um, this is what you get. This is what you get. What you get. You don't throw a fit, as we say in the Hook household. Um, Feelings, nothing more than. I feel like I should sing a Barry White song. Um, anyway, welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for joining me today on another Bible study in the book of Mark. Um, so it is a beautiful day outside. I did not actually go out this morning. I woke up at well, I didn't really go to sleep. I went to bed at 10. I was so tired, but the pain. So at midnight, I woke up, gargled some more with salt water, and then took a couple aspirin, and I think I fell asleep. But then I woke up at 3:30, which I usually wake up at 4, so it wasn't that big of a deal. Hold on a second. And so Then I woke up and I thought, I'm going to go for a walk. But then I was just so excited. I fell back asleep. And we're lucky that I'm here because I fell asleep until about a half an hour ago. So that's good. But as you can tell, my voice is a little bit lower today. Welcome to all of you. Hope you're having a great Thursday. It's a beautiful day outside, 56 degrees here in Vale. Um, we do have a bunch of birthdays that we want to mention. So let's go ahead and get those done. Hunter Bedoy, saw him yesterday. Hunter, happy birthday to you. Morgan Gipton is the 29th, which I think is Saturday. Hunter Spock is Sunday, I believe. And then Jordan Wallen is Sunday. So those are the birthdays that we have. 1, 2, 3, 4 birthdays over the next 5 or 4 days. Happy birthday to all of you. May God richly bless you on your special day. Um, all right. Man, it's so strange. I don't know if you even hear it, but for me, it seems lower to me. That's all I can say. I'm going to go and close that out, and I'm going to close that out. I'm going to go ahead and close that out. All right. Um, so anyway, let's get into our study. We are in Mark chapter 8, beginning at verse 27. Jesus has been in Bethsaida, where he healed the man who was blind. Remember, he did a double healing. He healed him. So, what do you see? And he goes, I see people looking around like they look like trees, walking trees. And he goes, well, let's try it again. So he spits on the ground and puts it in his eyes, and then he can see. And Jesus tells him not to tell anybody, which Jesus says a lot. Not entirely sure why, but you could imagine that part of the reason might be that if everybody starts coming to Jesus asking for healing, he won't get any work done, the work that he came here to do. Um, so he doesn't heal everybody. He only heals a select portion, those who are able to come and touch his robe or that he's able to heal. A lot more people who are sick than those who came to Jesus. Those who came to him had incredible faith because they didn't know for sure they'd be healed. They just heard stories about Jesus, but they did everything they could to get into his presence so that he could heal them, which is exactly what we should do. We should do everything we can to get into the presence of Jesus because he is the source of life and truth and all the things. The way of life is Jesus. So now they're in Bethsaida and they're going to go somewhere else. So let's just start reading at verse 27. Jesus and his disciples went on to the villages around Caesarea Philippi, and on the way he asked them, who do people say that I am? So let me just stop there. He's in Bethsaida. He's going north to Caesarea Philippi. I have a map here. If I go over here, you can see that Bethsaida is on the northeast portion of the Sea of Galilee, which is kind of where Jesus spends a lot of time. And then he goes north along the Jordan River to this town called, or to this area called Caesarea Philippi, where there's towns. And you'll notice that it's in the shadow of Mount Hermon. Mount Hermon is a 9,000 square foot mountain in the desert, and not square foot, elevation. So if you look out at Rincon Peak, that's 8,400 square feet. So just imagine a peak that's about 600 feet taller than Rincon Peak. And that's about what that's what Mount Hermon is. And the great thing about Mount Hermon is that it's so high up there, it picks up a lot of the moisture. The same thing is true with mountains around here in Vail. If it's snowing or there's any moisture, you'll get snow up on these mountains all the time. It's fun to look outside and see the snow on the Rincons. We had rain last week or 2 weeks ago. It was raining, and it got down to about 40 here in Vail. But the next day, if you woke up and you looked out to the east at Rincon Peak, you saw it completely white and snow-capped. And I always think that's cool. So you can actually go skiing on Mount Hermon. It's a very, very popular place. The whole range, I guess there's 4 peaks in Mount Hermon. All of them are rather high, high elevation. So you could go snow skiing up there, just like we can go snow skiing up at Mount Lemmon. Not always, but when they make snow, you can go up there and you can ski. And apparently the same thing is true with Mount Hermon. So Mount Hermon, to me, it seems like Mount Hermon is very similar to Tucson. It's around, the area of Caesarea Philippi is surrounded by mountains, and you can go up to the top of these mountains, although it's a lot harder back then because there were probably some trails, but there weren't any bike paths or car paths or anything like that. So that's where he is. He's gone from Bethsaida up along the Jordan River up to Caesarea Philippi. And what happens? Let me look here. Verse 28. Jesus asked, "Who do people say that I am?" And they, these are the disciples, replied, "Some say John the Baptist, others Elijah, and still others one of the prophets." So Jesus is asking his disciples, who is he? I mean, Jesus knows who he is. So he's asking them because he wants to know what they think or what the people think about him. He's doing a check here, a reality check. Obviously, I'm doing miracles. People are following me. Why are they doing this? Who do they think I am? And some people say, well, John the Baptist. Well, John the Baptist had been killed by Herod. We saw that earlier, that he had been imprisoned by Herod because Herod had married his brother-in-law's wife, his stepbrother's wife. And this was forbidden by Jewish law. So John the Baptist was proclaiming that this was wrong. Herod couldn't kill him because he was so popular, so he put him in prison. And then while he was in prison, he killed him. And so the people know that he's dead. And so they're like, well, you're John the Baptist, come back from life, which would be really interesting because normally people didn't come back from life, come back from the dead. And so some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah. Remember the Old Testament prophet Elijah, who did many miracles. And perhaps this is who it is. When you do the Seder meal, you always set a place for Elijah because you expect Elijah to come back. Well, maybe this is who it is. Maybe Elijah finally did come back. And now none of those people, they're powerful people. One is the New Testament prophet, one's an Old Testament prophet. And one thing about prophets, at least these prophets, is that they're anointed by God to do amazing and miraculous things. You remember Elijah did all of his miracles. And so people are like, well, if it's a miracle worker, it must be either John the Baptist or Elijah. But that would be short-sighted because there's another character in the Old Testament that it could be. And, one of the other prophets. So we know that there are other prophets in the Old Testament. There's Elisha, and, there's the minor prophets. But he goes on. In verse 29, he says, but what about you? He asked, who do you say that I am? And Peter answered, you are the Messiah. Now, the Messiah, Mashiach, Yeshua HaMashiach, is Jesus the Christ. This The Greek word for Messiah is Christos. The Hebrew word is Messiah. So it's the same thing. You are the Christ, you're the Messiah, you're the promised one from the Old Testament. And we haven't seen this promised one from the Old Testament show up yet. In the Gospel of Matthew, his whole purpose in writing his gospel is to prove to people that he's the promised Messiah from the Old Testament. Here, Jesus is asking, "Who do you think I am?" And they're like, "Well, John the Baptist or Elijah." And Jesus says, "And who do you say I am?" And Peter, bold Peter, like, "You're the Christ. You're the promised one from the Old Testament." So it's interesting that Peter knew that there was an Old Testament one called the Messiah, the Christos, who was promised, the anointed one. In English, it would be the anointed one. In Greek, it's Christos, and in Hebrew, it's Messiah. English, it's anointed one. The one to come, the one to come and set all things right. That's who he is, and all the Jewish people are looking forward to this. But by the time of Jesus, I think they'd given up hope that he would ever show up. And of course, their vision of who this would be somebody to go into Jerusalem to rule Israel as King David did, and bring Israel back to its greatest glory under King David or King Solomon. That's what the Jewish people wanted. They always want to go back and relive their glory days. But we know from Scripture that the reason why God chose Israel as his chosen people was to bring down a lineage from David into Christ, to bring forth the promised one, the anointed one, the Christos, the Messiah. And this one is Jesus. He is the long-awaited one from the Old Testament. And Peter recognizes that. And then verse 30, Jesus warned them not to tell anyone about him. So again, Jesus is telling the people, don't tell anybody about this. I don't want people to come and do that. So now what's interesting, a couple things about this. First of all, this idea that Peter recognizes Jesus as the Messiah is a pivotal point in the Gospels, because if Peter recognizes him as the Messiah, then there are others also who recognize him as Messiah. And then when Jesus confirms it by saying, "I'm not the Messiah," remember he just says, "Who am I?" And Peter says, "You're the Messiah." Jesus says, "Okay, don't tell anybody that I'm the Messiah." He doesn't say, "Oh, I'm not the promised one. I'm not the Messiah." Anybody thinks that Jesus never believed that he was the Messiah from the Old Testament and hasn't read the Gospels very closely, because Peter here identifies him as the Messiah, and Jesus doesn't refute it. He says, "Okay, don't tell anybody. He is the Messiah," and this is pivotal. Now, this particular passage has a lot of historical meaning for my life, because I was in 7th and 8th grade. I was baptized right before 7th grade. And then I was always a singer. When I was in grade school, I didn't like much sports like all the other boys, but I loved to sing. And one of my teachers recognized this in me and said that I had a good voice. And so my parents, bless their hearts, put me in a group called the Phoenix Boys Choir. And so I was in the Phoenix Boys Choir until my voice changed. And then once my voice changed, once your voice changes, you can't be in the boys choir anymore, because you don't have that pure soprano voice anymore. You have a nice voice, and a lot of people, when their voice changes, their voice gets better. Some people, when their voice changes, the voice gets worse. But the training of how to sing and how to shape your vowels and all this stuff like that, stays with you forever. And I was very, very proud of being in the boys choir. We would tour, the boys choir tours all over the world. And it's a great, great group. It's a great opportunity. My son was in the Tucson Boys Choir, and they went to Japan. And they teach you manners. They teach you how to look somebody in the eye and shake their hand and say, "Hi, I'm so and so." And I mean, all the stuff that the social etiquette stuff that people would go to. What was it? Uh, Evelyn Wood had speed reading, but there's all these social etiquette programs out there. Um, and then Cotillion. I remember Cotillion was one of those organizations that would bring together boys and girls, and they would dance, uh, and they'd learn the niceties and the etiquette of boys and girls dancing, and from the Victorian age, all that stuff. Anyway, that's what boys choirs do. They teach you how to be a gentleman at a young age. And I loved being in the boys choir. It was a great influential. As a matter of fact, there was a group, a singing group from the 80s called Mr. Mister. And they came to Phoenix. Jennifer and I were living in Phoenix still at that time. And they came to Phoenix, and they decided both of the lead singers of Mr. Mister met and knew each other from the Phoenix Boys Choir. And they went on to become very, very famous. One of their famous songs was "Kyrie eleison, down the road that I must travel." Anyway, so they came back to Phoenix, and they had a concert. It was a joint concert between Mr. Mister and the Phoenix Boys Choir. And so if you were an alumni of the Phoenix Boys Choir, you were allowed to get tickets and come see this event. And so Jennifer and I went to see it. Did I sing? There may have been one song where the alumni were called up to sing with Mr. Mister. I can't remember. It's been a long time. But it was there that we realized that Kyrie eleison, which means Lord have mercy in Greek, that it was a cool name. And so we ended up naming our first child, because Jennifer was pregnant. So this had been 1989, with our first child, and we named her Kyrie. And it was because of the concert with the Phoenix Boys Choir, with the misters and the boys. Anyway, all of that to say is that I loved singing. So in high school, we had a singing group. Our church had a singing group called the Good Life Singers. And there were probably about 20 high school voices in that group. And we would learn music or learn a musical, and then we would go perform that musical. Well, one of the musicals that we learned one year, I think I was a freshman or a sophomore in high school, was called The Witness by Jimmy Owens and his wife. What was her name? I can't remember. Carol Owens, Jimmy and Carol Owens. And it was called The Witness. And it's basically this whole idea of who is Jesus. And you sing all these songs. They're really catchy songs. And one of the main epics, main moments in the musical is where Jesus asks, "Who do you say I am?" And Peter boldly stands up and says, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. I say you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. You are the Christ. You are the Lord." All right, that's Peter's moment to shine. And for whatever reason, they gave that part to me. And so, the whole musical, I'm a young one. I might have been a freshman. I don't remember. A freshman or sophomore. I was very young. And certainly, my voice had already changed by 2 years, but I knew how to sing. I knew how to carry a pitch and all that sort of thing. But anyway, we came into the song, and I have it here. I think I can show it to you. This is a YouTube version of the song, right here. Tell me, what is my name? So that is my moment in the sun, except while my voice had changed, it hadn't completely changed. Every once in a while, it would break up. So here's my big moment in the sun, and I sing "You Are the Christ." And as soon as I get to "You Are the Christ," my voice cracks, and all the people in the choir were laughing at me because I purported myself to be this incredible singer, and then my voice cracks in the middle of the song. And they still, if I run into some of those people, which I do periodically, they still remember that my voice cracked on this song. You know, there's just some things that you remember in life that you can never get rid of, and this is one of them. It was the only time in the whole musical that my voice cracked. Uh, and I'm sure that everybody in the audience, understood that, he's a young boy. His voice hasn't, his voice is on the verge of changing, but he's not an opera singer right now. He's a young boy, trying to figure out his voice, uh, from being a soprano in the boys' choir to being a full out tenor in life. So that was pretty funny. But I've always loved Peter ever since then. Because in the musical, I played the role of Peter throughout the whole musical. And there was just something about Peter that when I sang this song, I envisioned what it must be like to be Peter following Jesus and boldly proclaiming that he's the Messiah. And that, and among other things, have always made me say that Peter is my favorite disciple. Peter's probably a lot of people's favorite disciple because he's mentioned more than any other disciples. Peter, James, and John seem to be the three that are mentioned the most. They go up to the mountain of the Transfiguration. By the way, one of the locations that's suggested for the Mount of Transfiguration is Mount Hermon, right here outside of Caesarea of Philippi to the north. That might have some, we don't know for sure which mountain it was, but because he was in this area during the Transfiguration, a lot of people think that this is the mountain that he went up to. Other mountains have claimed him, but one of the possibilities is that he went up to Mount Hermon, up to Rincon Peak. And it would be a long, arduous journey to get up to the top of that mountain for the Transfiguration. Anyway, the Transfiguration is a moment in history where Jesus goes up with Peter, James, and John, and he becomes he shines. He shines. He's transfigured. He's the face of beauty and the sun on Jesus. It's called the Transfiguration. It's so wonderful that the disciples are like, let's just stay up here forever. And Jesus says, no, we have to go down to the mountain. We have to go down off of the mountain and, do the work from which I came to do. All right. All right. I think perhaps I'll leave it there. Yeah, we'll do that. And then we'll talk about some of the darker stuff that's going on, because Jesus didn't come just to be transfigured or to have Peter proclaim him as the Messiah. Jesus came directly to go to Jerusalem, to be persecuted, to be killed, so he could rise again and save us from our sins. And that's all being foretold or foreshadowed in the next sections. So we'll leave that for our next time together. Let's close in prayer. Gracious God, thank you for this day. Be with us over the weekend and keep us in your grace. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, I'm going to close out that. That's called The Witness by Jimmy and Carol Owen. A great musical, a great musical. And so we will get together on Monday. I hope you all have a great day. Hopefully by Monday, I'll be through with this, whatever it is going on in my life that I don't like. But I'm sure that from this point on, it'll be the snot. So I'll have that on Thursday and Friday, and then maybe by Sunday, I'll be a little bit better, and hopefully by Monday, it will be just fine. That's my prayer. Thanks for joining me. I hope you have a great day, and we'll see you later. Take care. Bye.